We're living in some of the dumbest times right now and electing some of the dumbest people right now. So an American Airlines flight crashed into a helicopter. Over 60 people perished due to this accident that happens. Your president, Donald Trump, has a press conference about this horrible accident that happened where Americans and other people from other countries died because of it. He comes out, and most of us would come out and we would give our condolences to the families. We would talk about how, we're going to do everything we can for these families. We know that there's nothing that we can do to bring their family members back or make them feel better about this, but we can at least comfort them in their time of need. Then talk about how much we're going to do to make sure this never happens again. Bring on experts to talk about, how we're going to make sure this never happens again. But not your president, Donald Trump. Within 3 minutes of going out to start that press conference, he blames Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do you realize the mental gymnastics you have to go through to blame the previous president, the previous president, and something that has nothing to do with it at all on something that happened under your watch? Within 3 minutes, this is what your president, Donald Trump, was saying.
I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing.
So I guess Donald Trump wants us all to pretend that the FAA director wasn't forced to resign when Donald Trump was inaugurated. They want us all to also pretend that on January 22nd, the Aviation Safety Advisory Committee wasn't disbanded. That's what they want us to pretend. They want us to pretend that this had nothing to do with any of his decisions and everything to do with Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. These people are a complete joke. You are the reason, Donald Trump, that these things are happening. There was never any type of planes that collided with each other during the Obama administration or during the Biden administration. And if you notice on that thing, he was also talking about all of the decisions and things that Joe Biden and Barack Obama were doing that he had changed, right? He talked about all of that. Someone called him out on that. Someone sitting there said, hey, I looked on the FAA website. What you're just reading, that's on there, but that's been there since 2013. You didn't change it in 2016 when you got in office. And then Donald Trump goes and says, yes, I did, and says a bunch of stuff. And the guy's like, it's been there since 2013. And Donald Trump just says, be quiet. That's your president. A juvenile. He's lying. He's lying. Nothing that he's trying to blame on this, He didn't change any of those things. The things that were changed are things that are actually crucial to what happened during this accident. But Donald Trump doesn't want to take any responsibility for that. Then he brings on his transportation secretary, who basically says, first of all, let's just point this out. Donald Trump, obviously they were in a room, and Donald Trump told every person that was going to go on that stage and go to that podium that they better thank him for his leadership, because that's the first thing they do. And then they better blame this on DEI. But I don't think this transportation secretary fully got his marching orders correctly, because he got up there and he said, we're not going to pass the buck. We're going to take responsibility and we're going to make sure this never happens again. I don't think that's what Donald Trump wanted you to say, bro, but that's what he said.
What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's not acceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again.
So he says all of that, right? He says, we're not going to pass the buck. We're going to take responsibility for this. And then Pete Hegseth and JD Vance come on stage and they pass the buck and pass the responsibility as well. Because Pete Hegseth knows his marching orders. He got up there and he said, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Trump for his leadership, great leadership. And then he goes on to blame DEI, of course.
Because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DOD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you.
The only reason they're doing this is because they know people are falling for it. They know that the people who hold them in high regard, the constituents, the people who voted for them, are actually falling for this bullshit. And if that wasn't enough, if Pete Hegseth coming up there with his bullshit line about DEI is now over, like that's what it was. Hey, just to let you guys know, it's because they've been hiring black and brown people and gay people and some women. And that's why. But hey, we're getting rid of that. So now you won't have to worry about it anymore because we're getting rid of DEI. So if that wasn't enough, then JD Vance comes on. And again, he knows his marching orders. He starts out with, thank you, Mr. President, for your great leadership. No leadership at all. There has been no great leadership, but that's what he says. And then he doubles down on it. He brings up that people, white people, of course, white men, of course, have been trying to get jobs in air traffic control, but they're not getting them because of the color of their skin.
Something the president said that I think bears re-emphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry.
So I just want to start this segment off by saying, fuck these people. Fuck Donald Trump, JD Vance, Pete Hegseth, and all of these motherfuckers who want to stand up there and basically say that people who look like me are too dumb to do their job. And when it comes out that the pilots were white and the air traffic controllers were white, and they've been around since Donald Trump was president, and they can't blame it on DEI anymore, do you think they're going to all of a sudden take credit for it? Of course they're not. They're going to still pretend that it's because of DEI. The nerve of these people. There are people who are still mourning. The bodies are not even, they haven't had their funerals or anything yet, and this guy is already trying to pass it off on a former president, another former president, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here's the crazy part too. At the end of the press conference, he was asked, okay, after saying, I got to get my people in, all these diversity hires are causing the problem. After saying all of that, he was asked, should Americans feel safe flying? And he said, yeah, of course, we have the best. What are you talking about? You literally just finished saying that the only reason this happened was because of the people who are there now are a bunch of diversity, equity, and inclusion hires. And so if they are that, then how is it safe? Why should we feel safe until you get rid of all these DEI people? They're so full of shit, they don't even remember. He doesn't even remember his own lies from a few minutes ago. He doesn't even know how to freaking weave it all together the right way, that he's contradicting himself in the same freaking press conference. And we are only 10 days in. 10 days in. 1,450 days of this bullshit to go. Period.
Don't want no enemies or ops. Envy in their heart, I tell them stop. Vacation on the yacht.